Welcome to ThinkTech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm Duke Oishi.
And I'm Maria Kashem.
In our show this time, we'll take a look at how cycling is doing in Oahu, and we'll ask why there isn't more of it.
We'll talk with some of the leaders of the Hawaii Bicycling League and get their views on what should be done.
First, we met with Chad Taniguchi, Executive Director of HBL, at Triangle Park in Kohala at the foot of Diamond Head Road, to get a handle on what HBL is doing and how the city is planning to implement the charter provision calling for more bike lanes.
The Honolulu Century Ride happened on September 30, 2012. That was the 31st year that we had the Century Ride. And there were nearly 2,000 people who rode from Waikiki to Kailua to Ka'ava and back. It was the safest day of the year to ride on the roads because you had 2,000 friends with you, and what happens in that situation is cars notice that cyclists are on the road. And that's why we want more people to ride bicycles, because the more people who ride bicycles, the more normal it will be. If we get people willing to walk and bike because they know it's safe, then we'll be a better community for it. We'll be healthier, we'll save more money, we'll have less pollution, be better for the environment, and better for us and everybody. And we'll be not using fossil fuels for energy. We'll be using our human energy, and as I like to say, it's 7 miles for one musubi on a bike. Anyway, Complete Streets was a big victory for pedestrian and bicycle advocacy. There's also a 2% law that says 2% of eligible federal funds need to be spent for bike lanes and bike paths. And the Oahu Bike Plan, which is the thing I'm holding, was first done in 1999. Hawaii Bicycling League was a big part of getting that to happen. And now, 13 years later, there's a new plan. It's the Oahu Bike Plan that just came out in August 2012. We have 132 miles of bikeways on the island now. This plan calls for 310 more miles, so 3 times the current amount would be added. And we can imagine that by doing so, we'll be encouraging more people to bicycle. That is going to cost $68 million. Okay, that sounds like a big figure, but really when you look at it in terms of the amount of people it would help get healthy, the amount of gas it would save, the benefits to our environment, benefits to our public health, that really is a small amount. So we'd encourage the public to support spending that money sooner than later. It calls for this being done over 20 or 30 years. Although there's 310 miles, there's 62 miles identified as the low-hanging fruit, the projects that can be done quickly and relatively cheaply. $2.7 million for 62 miles of bike route. And this mainly involves painting bike lanes or painting sharrows on the roads after they repave. So sharrows are shared lane arrows that stand for the proposition that a bicycle is allowed to be right there where the sharrow is. A lot of times that's right in the middle of the lane. And that sharrow visually exemplifies the law that is on the books today. That law says that when a traffic lane is too narrow for a car and bicycle to drive side by side safely in that lane, the bicycle, for its own safety, the bicyclist, may go to the center of the lane and use the full lane. If the bicyclist chooses to ride on the right side of a narrow lane, the bicyclist risks being pushed into the curb and hitting the really bumpy spots near the curb. That's why bicyclists who are experienced and concerned for their own safety many times take the full lane. Our mantra as cyclists is that cyclists fare best when we act and are treated as drivers of vehicles. So we want to act like a car and be treated like a car. The second part of that mantra is take control of the lane and don't give up control until it's safe to give up control. Sometimes I'm riding in the middle of the road, a car is honking their horn behind me, revving their engine, being aggressive toward me, but I'm not going to give up control for their convenience because I know it's safer for me to be in the middle. It's going back to a really ancient Hawaiian tradition that was enunciated by King Kamehameha when he became king 214 years ago. That's the law of the splintered paddle. And it's kind of a longer story. Kanawai Mamalahoi is the law of the splintered paddle. But it stands for the proposition that everyone, young and old, men and women, strong and weak, have a right to be safe on the roads.
My bike here, so it's a great bike for both sport and commuting. It's a road bike. It's a women's specific road bike. It was sort of like not super racy. It's not a super racy designed bike, but it's great for getting around and for sport. It's women's specific because it has a shorter tube here. It's a little bit taller to accommodate my shorter torso, longer legs, which bike fitting is actually really important, especially if you're not like just a standard average man's proportions. Bike fitting is really important and makes a huge difference on how comfortable you feel on the road.
This is what they call a hybrid bike because it's halfway between a road bike and a mountain bike. It is meant for commuting and riding in the city. The Hawaii Bicycling League has classes where we teach people about the rules of the road, about how to start and stop, how to signal, and then we'll take you on a 1-hour bike ride. Today, we're going to look at some of the places that the bike plan calls for immediately making bike facilities. And one is, as we go down Diamond Head Road, we're at Fort Ruger Park or Triangle Park, and we go toward Waikiki. There'll be sharrows on the downhill, and there'll be a bike lane on the uphill. After that, we'll go to Waialae Avenue, where there's calls for sharrows and bike lanes too. And we'll end up at Beretania Street, where there's call for bike lane from University to Makali and beyond.
From there, we rode off to explore a number of locations and intersections that HBL is concerned about, and we learned what is supposed to happen to improve these places for the benefit of safe biking.
The first location we visited was Diamond Head Road at the Lookout.
When I ride pretty much like a car. So I stop at stop signs and then proceed. If it's clear, signal to the right that I'm going right. And here this road is wide enough that I can stay to the right without taking the entire lane up. And it's really the perfect road for adding a bike lane in because it's wide enough to accommodate both me and a car. So we're gonna keep going up. And this is all an area where there'd be a great spot for a bike lane. I'm going right now about 14 miles per hour, so pretty leisurely pace. See a car pass me on the left, plenty of room. So here the lane is narrowing a bit, so I'm going to take the full lane. For safety's sake, even if a car follows me, I'll stay in this part of the lane. Because if I go to the right, you can see there's a little debris, and it would be unsafe if I had to go farther to the right. And here we are.
This is one of the places where the city has plans to put in sharrows and bike lanes. It's Diamond Head Road coming from Fort Ruger Park, Triangle Park, down to Paki Avenue at the beginning of Kapiolani Park. And the city's plan generally is to put sharrows on the downhill side so bikes can use the full lane when they need to, and then a bike lane on the uphill side. If you can do almost every road like that, that would be great. You know, really hats off to the city for recognizing that they need to make the places that cyclists use safer with bike facilities.
The second location we visited was on Waialae Avenue at Kaimuki Park. When the bike lane improvements planned for Waialae Avenue are implemented, Kaimuki will be a different place and a far more integrated and interesting neighborhood.
So here I'll go to the right, kind of wide, share, and then the road becomes narrow again. So share less. And here you want to ride away from the door zone. You don't want to get too close to that door in case it opens. The law is that drivers are supposed to check before you open the door. But again, that's not one of the laws that everybody knows. So coming up to a stop, we slow down rather than stop because it's kind of hard to get started from a total stop. And we maintain our line rather than weave in and out of the cars. We stay in the same predictable line. So I'm looking over to see how many cars are back there. One's far away. So I'm making my turn signal. Let them know, okay, we are turning. Make my turn. Okay, still kind of narrow. So take the lane. Okay, here, it's a big stop area. If I was going right, I'd go on the right side. Because I'm going left, I go by the left side. Stop. Clear. Check. And go. Morning. Make friends with people. Stay predictable. This is Wailai Avenue. We're at 10th and we're looking toward Coco Head. So the city's plans, which haven't been finalized, but the idea is to put a bike lane on, in this part, put a bike lane on that side, the uphill side, and the bike lane would go up till 11th, and then it would go Sharrows down to Coco Head. So bike lane from St. Louis Drive all the way up to 11th on the Makai side, ocean side. On the Mauka side, the mountain side, because there's street parking now for the businesses want to retain the street parking, so the idea is not to have a bike lane on this side, but compromise is to have a Sharrow on this side. The Sharrow will be right in that lane over there. And again, it's going to tell the drivers and the cyclists that the cyclists can be in the middle of that lane. And please don't get angry when that happens. Just follow and then pass on the left. See, there's 2 lanes. So, and then further down by 7th Avenue, the idea is to then have a bike lane on the Mauka side. So Sharrows until 7th. And then from 7th to St. Louis Drive, there'll be a bike lane.
The great thing about putting bike lanes in this particular neighborhood is that it's just such a hub for local community. There's tons of great restaurants here, Town over there, Boston's here, Salt up there, all kinds of up-and-coming restaurants, some of the best in the city. And we've also got a neighborhood that's really close to UH Manoa down the street. So it's a great hub for people to commute back and forth and visit all these great small businesses and really build a local community. Once we start putting in these bike lanes is something that I saw in San Francisco, were these things called parklets. So parklets were essentially little green spaces outside of some of the smaller businesses and even some of the larger businesses in a particular community, and they would feature outdoor seating, areas for bike locks and bike storage, and just places that people could sit outside and enjoy the neighborhood and the community. Okay, so now we're going to head down Wailai Ave and down to Beretania, which is one of the most important thoroughfares for bike commuting in the city. So coming up here is where we're going to have to shift over into the center lane to avoid getting forced onto the freeway now that this light's green. I usually start doing this about now because if there's traffic, I don't want to get pushed, onto the right. And going downhill, you can really move more or less with the flow of traffic, so you don't feel too bad like you're in someone's way. Here we'll be taking a right to proceed onto King Street, which turns into Beretania. And this is an especially important area to have bike lanes in. You'll see this guy up there on the right biking, you know, on the sidewalk, because it's really, I mean, it's intimidating if you're a new cyclist. And we're gonna pull over up here, just a little ways past this intersection, so we can stop and check out Beretania and the lanes that we want to put in over here.
The third location we visited was at the intersection of Beretania and Eisenberg, right near Teddy's Bigger Burgers. This is an important location because it's the biking commuter entryway into the central part of metropolitan Oahu. If Beretania and King and Yonge Street can all be made bike-friendly, many more cyclists can commute to work.
So we're here on Beretania because, as I mentioned while we were riding down, this is one of the most important roads. This and the parallel King Street are the most important roads connecting sort of the eastern area of Honolulu to downtown. So there's plenty of space here to put a bike lane in. The far right lane here for quite a ways is actually even wide enough to accommodate both a car and a bike lane to the right. Right now, Beretania is it's a really, really bad road. It's in desperate need of repaving. The full right lane is pretty much modeled with potholes. So as it is right now, cyclists really do have to take the full lane here so they're not forced over the potholes. So when you start to open up some of these roads to really make it more easy to access downtown and the important business hubs of the city, you'll just see so many more people taking on bicycling. Because as it is now, it's pretty hard to navigate some of these roads on a bike. You'll see a lot of people riding on the sidewalk here because it's just not, it doesn't feel that safe to ride on the road. I envision a future here where, you know, we can make Honolulu as bike-friendly as cities like Portland, as friendly as cities like San Francisco, as friendly as cities like New York towards cycling. I mean, if New York, of all places, where it's, you know, renowned for its aggressive drivers, its terrible taxi cabs, and its terrible lanes, can vow to put in hundreds of bike lanes in the next several years, I don't see why we can't do it too. If you biked every day, it would be enough exercise for you in your day for most people. It's a great way to get outside, to reduce air pollution, to make our beautiful environment here better. We've got the best weather in the country, and cycling is just a way for people to embrace that and, you know, to preserve our aina. And that's what I foresee for the future of Hawaii.
You can join HBL by going to our website, hbl.org. We have 700 members now. If we can say in the future we have 5,000 members or 10,000 members, then the people in government will recognize that really the numbers of people who bike and want to bike are growing. And that's the most important part of joining HBL.
Could there be a more perfect environment in the world for cycling? The sun shines most days, the temperature is moderate, the trades are friendly most days, and the topography is perfect. It's hard to believe that the city and county of Honolulu has done so little to support cycling.
It's hard to understand how we can spend billions to improve traffic and how we can claim to be interested in health when we haven't built these bike lanes, and how we can claim to be moving to renewable energy and energy efficiency when we haven't yet made way for cycling, the most efficient transportation of all.
All in all, we came to the conclusion that there wasn't enough biking in Oahu, that the city has to implement all the plans for better bike lanes and to make it safe and easy for people to take to the streets on their bikes.
This could be the greatest cycling community in the world, and that certainly is not the case now. And once we wake up on the points and benefits, maybe then we'll get smart about incentivizing bikes as the ideal way to travel in this perfect environment. A message to the mayor, whoever he may be, and to everyone in the city council. Want to be popular? How about doing something for biking?
So this morning we rode around to get the footage for the Hawaii Bicycling League program, and you were there. You were in the peloton, so to speak.
It was a different experience to bike recreationally, especially in such good company. You really do feel that safety, you know, and they were talking a lot about safety in numbers and being appreciated as riders out there by motorists. And I tell you, that's something that I'm always paranoid about, is whether or not cars see me and the respect that they may or may not pay to my situation there on a cycle. And being in a group, the feeling of safety is much, much greater. It really does give you a better and deeper appreciation for how to share the road, how to be responsible, how to act as though you're a car. Being aware of that, of course, is very important, but if you're the only one who's aware and the motorists aren't, then you're not completing that equation. It's something they really should probably teach better in driver's ed. I mean, as strange as it sounds, I think that we should see that in driver's ed for the island. I think that Hawaii's teens should be, educated at the very get-go when they're talking about getting behind the wheel of a car about how to respect bicyclists on the road.
What do you think of HBL? I know when we spoke earlier, you were not a member. Did you get to be a member today somehow?
I'm going to write him a check. Absolutely. I came away from that talk with Chad and Ambika. I'm fired up. I'm going to go ahead and join. I really like what they're fighting for there. I think that not only bicycle safety and information is important, but also expanding bike access. There's the recreational aspect, and that's when you're talking about putting bike lanes or multi-use lanes or whatever up Diamond Head. That's one thing. That's kind of a recreational aspect of it. Then there's the transportation aspect, and unfortunately, not a lot of us are commuting past Diamond Head in that sense. And I'd really like to see some of those other routes that they were talking about, namely the Kaimuki area. Waialae Avenue is terrible. And I'd love to see a smoothly paved, dedicated bike lane for much of Waialae Avenue for people to actually use when they're trying to get somewhere.
Thank you for being a good sport, going riding, and being our man on the scene.
Hey, anytime you need somebody to do that.
And now let's take a look at our ThinkTech calendar of events going forward.
ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. drive time radio series on KGU 760 AM continues this week. Tune into 760 AM for Tech on Wednesday, Asia in Review on Thursday, and ThinkTech Fridays on Friday. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech Radio. And now, here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
Rick Dasog is a terrific reporter.
Well, according to his report on Hawaii News Now, Kurt Kawafuchi, under oath, was being deposed and essentially said that it was Linda Lingle who, behind closed doors, quashed an attempt to collect transient accommodation tax from 3 of the largest online travel groups, Expedia, Travelocity, and Orbit. What's at issue here is the fact that they sell hotel rooms online, but they apparently don't collect the TAT. According to Kawafuchi, it was her decision to not pursue the case. And he, as tax director and a good soldier, as he said, essentially followed orders. But it's one of these cases of plausible deniability. Lingle's saying, well, I don't make tax policy, that's up to the tax director. But Kurt, under the gun and under oath, and he's an attorney, he's not, he's no stranger to the legal process.
Great credibility in my eyes, and I'm sure in yours.
Absolutely. It's interesting that this story came out now. Clearly it's part of a process that the Abercrombie administration has picked up. There is a procedure going on in tax court, and the deposition was current, so it's not being dredged up. It's actually a current, ongoing process. The $500 million that's in question, is a pretty big dent in the budget, and so I think it's worthwhile that they pursue it. But that transient accommodation tax is that's a lot of money.
A lot of money, and this is at a time when the furloughs were going on. So there's a great irony that on the one hand you have no money for school kids in school, On the other hand, you quash an investigation that could have yielded $500 million plus for a state that was having fiscal problems. So what do you make of all this, Bill?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that it's politics as usual. It's the the powers that be using plausible deniability as an excuse for not taking responsibility. It's lack of transparency, which frustrates us at so many levels in government. And it's another example of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. I mean, these are big companies, potentially big donors to somebody's Senate campaign. You really don't know why the governor or her good soldiers didn't pursue something that was so important to the fiscal stability of our state at a time when things were really drear.
And you see everything being politicized, you can be fairly sure that proper policies are not an issue. It's politics instead.
That's right.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome, Jay.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of ThinkTech. But first, we'd like to thank our underwriters.
Thanks to the Scheidler Family Foundation. It supports a number of educational, cultural, and charitable organizations, including ThinkTech.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Miko on Maui and Helco on the Big Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Hove is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle & Cook, Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state. Okay, Maria, that wraps up this week's edition of ThinkTech. Remember, you can watch ThinkTech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Jay Fidel does. For additional times, check out OC16.tv.
You bet, Duke. For lots more ThinkTech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on ThinkTech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Duke Oishi. Thanks so much for joining us on ThinkTech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Maria Kashem, and I approve this message.